Look. Eh.
What?
Oh, you're playing the game with the weird girl figure on it.
Why? It's an MMORPG.
Ancestors. One.
I want to play this game. It's been so long since I've played it.
Thought the days of human beings living in caves by choice had come to an end centuries ago.
Come on, Panda.
You must have never been to Kandahar in the northwest of Iran. The houses here
Panda,
have been
come on.
built directly into the rocks, and the secretive people who live inside them give away very little information about who they are or where they come from. Some of them claim that their cave homes have existed for more than 700 years. Although evidence to back up that claim is thin on the ground. Some of the elders of the community even say that the original inhabitants built them after hiding in the caves while fleeing from the Mongol army. And they liked their temporary accommodation so much that they decided to stay. In the local language, the homes are known as Karan, a word that translates as beehive. To our eyes, they look a lot more like a gigantic termite colony.
It's not
although
that
it's thought that the caves were originally formed when Mount Sahed last
There we
erupted
go.
approximately
Come on, Panda.
11,000 years ago.
Oh yes, you are a good girl,
Very few
Panda.
locations in the world have been privileged enough to be named a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so the fact that Quinta de Bragaleira in Portugal has been ascribed that status should tell you more about what a special place it is. The stunningly ornate 4-hectare estate is more than deserving of the honor, though. Every single building and structure was designed by Italian architect Luigi Manini, and there have been various myths and legends built up around the designer and his creation in the years since building work ended in 1910. Mysterious symbols and etchings are hidden all over, and some of them have been interpreted as being references to the legends of the Knights of Templar. Even people who disagree with that theory say that they're references to either alchemy or masonry. It would appear that Manini may have been a member of some very secret societies. Perhaps the most impressive structures to be found there are the aquarium and the chapel, both of which were purpose-built to have the appearance of something that grew naturally from the rock. Sometimes the name of a location will tell you everything you need to know about the place. On other occasions, it will tell you nothing at all. We think there's a fairly solid clue in the name of the Mocton Magnetic Hill, which is in New Brunswick, Canada. For reasons scientists claim to have been able to explain, the usual laws of gravity don't seem to apply on the hill. When cars began to drive up the hill in the 1930s, drivers began to notice something extremely unusual. When they let go of the brakes at the bottom of the hill and allow their cars to roll, they roll back up the hill. That's not all. Water runs uphill here too, and so do balls, tires, and anything else you can place on the ground to test the effect. Experts say that this is an optical illusion known as the gravity helical, where what appears to be uphill is actually just part of a larger incline that goes downhill. But the explanation doesn't wash with a lot of people. Inevitably, that's led to a lot of stories of
Alexa.
UFOs and other mysterious forces.
Mom, what's the date?
Kukatinsky Gorge in North Ossetia is one of the most famous areas of natural beauty in all of Russia. But one of the most popular attractions to be found there isn't in any way natural. There's a route you can take through the gorge named the Miracle Trail, and its best known feature is a hidden sword plunged deep into a rock. Nobody knows how long it's been there, and nobody knows how it got there. The most popular story about it is that it once belonged to a huge hunter who encountered a traveler while walking the length of the trail. He and the traveler were known to each other and were enemies. In fact, the hunter had sworn to kill the traveler if he ever saw him again. The traveler, though, was weak and injured. Instead of attacking him, the hunter reconciled with him and helped him on his way, ending their blood feud by driving his sword into the stone. That's why to some people it's known as the Sword of the Blood Myth. That's likely to be nothing more.
Look at, you see that? That sword is huge. Yeah, it is. It's bigger than a human.
Oh, it's an arm one? Your cousin from Boston.
Your cousin from Boston. Look
How did
here.
it really get there? Is it nothing more than
I
a
completely
fake
forgot how to
reference the
play.
legend of King Arthur, or something more profound?
I thought it was.
In almost every part of the world, there are legends about giants roaming the land in times of antiquity. In some places, there are even hints of evidence that there's more to the tales than just legends. If there were giants, perhaps there were also dwarfs. If there were dwarfs, they might have gathered together in Makhunik in Iran. Until just over 100 years ago, the average height of a human being living in Makhunik was more than 1.5 feet shorter than the height of humans living everywhere else in Iran. These were small people, and their architecture gruesome. This village has existed for 1,500 years,
Wow.
and yet for 1,400 of those years,
They're short.
the average resident was barely 3.5 feet tall.
Wow.
There may be a scientific explanation to this. It would have been hard to raise animals in the hot, dry conditions around Makhunik, so there was little meat and very few vegetables. The Makhunik diet was an unhealthy diet, and that may have led to malnutrition and stunted growth. Only when the 20th century brought roads and cars did the situation change, hence the residents now being larger than they were. The first thing you'll notice when you look at the skyline of Albarabello in Italy is that the rooftops look a lot less flat and square than what you're used to seeing. This is known as the spinning top village of Italy, and it's easy to see why. The strange design of the homes here is born of a conflict between the Spanish and the Italians during the 17th century. The area was under the control of the Spanish at the time, and the King of Naples had sent tax collectors to Puglia. Hearing that an unpayable bill would soon be received, local leader Count Agoviva ordered the construction of so-called chulo houses, homes that were built without mortar and topped with conical roofs for his people to live in. The reason was that they could be taken apart quickly and therefore hopefully wouldn't be subject to any settlement tax. The count was eventually overthrown by his own people, leading to the proclamation of Albarabello as a royal town. But the buildings created at the count's insistence are still standing. Building properties this way has become a tradition since then, one that's still observed today. Depending on who you believe, the Huaxing village in Hunan, China is one of two things. If the Chinese government is to be believed, it's the richest village in the world, and one of the finest and most prosperous achievements of communism. If the vectors are to be believed, it's a sham that's been specifically engineered for the purposes of pro-Chinese and pro-communist propaganda. We can't tell you what's true and what isn't, but it's definitely a very strange place. Row after row of identical villas line the streets, and there's an 80-story skyscraper at the heart of the village with a solid gold globe on top of it. It's said that everyone who moves into Huaxi is immediately given a car and a villa free of charge, and that all the residents have the equivalent of $100,000 in their bank accounts at all times. Defectors have claimed that while the villas and cars are real, all the residents work 7 days a week without holidays and are only allowed to keep 30% of their salaries. As an added catch, should any of the residents choose to move away, they lose all the money and possessions they built up while living in Huaxi.
Wow.
There are incredible historical sites all over Peru, some of which date back thousands of years. So it's unsurprising that a few of them get missed by all but the most well-informed of visitors. Hardly anyone knows about the stone prison in the tiny town of Hakira, deep in the Peruvian highlands. But it's definitely worth seeing if you ever find yourself in the area. Nobody seems to know exactly when the megalithic prison was created, but the most widely believed theory is that it was used by the early Spanish invaders who wanted to keep the Inca people out of the way while they stole all their silver and gold. Some people even believe that enslaved Inca people were forced to create the prison themselves, but the sophistication and quality of the doors and chambers suggest otherwise. This may be a much older structure, one which the Spanish just happened to come across and decided to repurpose.
Do you want to play?
The stone shaping technology required to create these openings in such precise shapes shouldn't have existed at the time they were allegedly made, and yet here they are. This could be yet another example of ancient technology that's been lost over the years. There's a place close to Bella, Pakistan that's so ancient and mysterious that both its name and true purpose are long forgotten. Some call it Gundrani, some call it the Cave City of West Bella. It's also been known as the House of the Spirits and the town of Mai Guadrani. The only thing known about it is it's been there for a very, very long time. The current pet theory of archaeologists and historians is that it was first occupied during the 9th century and housed a reclusive group of Buddhists. There are certainly Buddhist elements about the design of the caves, but the question of exactly who built them and when has never been answered with solid evidence. And they never be. Around 1,500 caves were counted during the days of British rule in Pakistan. Erosion and neglect since then, even a mere 500 remain now. There are several unpleasant myths and legends about the caves, including the idea that a king and his daughter once became trapped there and were tormented by demons, and that the demons of the mountains would consume the souls of anyone who stepped into any of the caves. Perhaps these old superstitions put people off the idea of doing maintenance or conservation work in the area. Once upon a time, Salina Tera was an underground salt mine. Now it's a science fiction theme park. It's an unlikely turn of events for the old mine, which is in Tera, Romania, but it's worth...
Make it snappy. What is it?
And whether you're running around town or getting ready to leave, we're people at Valvoline.
Visitors who flock to it, and also for the local economy. Not only is Salina Tera in Romania, but it's also in the Transylvania district of Romania, the place where legends say Dracula's castle once stood. If a slightly gothic-looking theme park 400 feet below ground belongs anywhere on the planet, it's there. Salt mining at the site began at least 2,000 years ago and held underground during the years of Roman occupation. Amazingly, the mine was still open in 1932, and even after that it was used as a bomb shelter during the Second World War. If you can cope with being so far below the safety of the surface, where there was once nothing but salt and tired miners, there's now a full-size Ferris wheel, pool tables, bowling alleys, an amphitheater, and plenty more. You can consider the sculpture garden in Perikala, Finland, a tribute to the life, work, and visions of sculptor Vieho Ronkanen. But if the eccentric artist style isn't to your taste, you may find that some of what's to be found there may visit you again during your nightmares. He worked on the garden for almost his entire career and never considered it finished, adding pieces to it constantly from the 1960s until almost the day he passed away in 2010. There are more than 500 concrete statues there now, although over 200 of them are allegedly depictions of the artist himself in various yoga poses. Many people have commented that they find the statues quite sinister. Finding out that some of them feature real human teeth makes them even more sinister. The very few works that aren't based on human figures appear to be large, misshapen trees with conical branches. Although he never minded people coming to look at his work, Ronkanen refused to allow any of it to be exhibited outside of his garden and refused almost all requests for interviews. That makes it almost impossible to ascertain what he really meant by all of this. The shining beauty of Freya Nakhon Cave in Thailand is half made by nature and half made by nurture. You'll find the stunning sight in the Sam Roy yacht as the sun passes over the top of this incredible cavern. It shines through a gap in the roof and casts a spotlight onto the floor. It's looked this way for thousands of years, but wasn't noticed by anybody until a local nobleman abandoned his ship during stormy weather, crawled his way to the land, and used the cave for shelter.
Aren't those the ones that I just solved?
Stalactites
For
and
zero.
stalagmites ran from almost the floor to the ceiling, and crooked trees ran up the sides of the walls, straining to reach the light. The pavilion in the cavern floor wasn't added until 1890, when a decision was made to spruce the place up a bit for the impending visit of King Rama V. The king enjoyed his visit and signed the cavern wall. That started a tradition. Almost every Thai monarch since